Guys, in yesterday's video, we talked about the 13.3 changes. In today's video, we're putting those changes into tier lists. So we're going to be talking about the most broken champions, the worst champions, champions that are going to go up and down in terms of the tiers they're in. So make sure you stick around for the whole video, of course. And by the way, this is Ziggs, what's going on? And if you guys want to take your League of Legends games to the next level, GameLeap.com. Linked in the description, comment section. Guys, our challenger players and coaches are uploading videos constantly to help you improve your game. Whether it's in terms of your micro, your macro, even just your mental, right? We have courses, we have guides, we have high elo on analyses, we have all the videos you need to peak on the Rift. So get that exclusive access to our library content by signing up, and let's get into the 13.3 tier list. Now we're going to start by talking about top laners, and not really much is changing. Darius, Fiora, Jax, Jace, like, I don't know if these are in the last tier list at the top, but for this one they are, and they've been here for ages. Well, maybe not Jace, because the recent buffs have really helped him out, and you guys might be like, but Jace doesn't have the best win rate, which is true, right? But we're just talking about actually winning top lane here. We're not talking about winning games. Otherwise, this tier list would look completely different. We'd have champions a lot lower, a lot higher, and champions who are high, a lot lower. So this is just about top lane purely, right? Laning phase. Darius, Fiora, Jax, Jace. I don't even need to elaborate on this anymore after saying that. You guys catch my drift. Now, as far as the champions actually getting changed in 13.3, well, one of these is Kayle, and that's why she's moved up all the way from C tier to underrated. So the actual passive movement speed buff is really nice, and also the ease on hit damage ratio, which is kind of going back to what it was. This is huge for Kayle. Now, just remember, if you're picking Kayle, do not pick her. Well, honestly, blind picking her is really risky, but don't pick her into magic damage champions. Kayle's magic resist, Riot have nerfed this so much, that's why she's just absolutely dog tier in the mid lane. So if you're playing her in the top lane, just make sure you're against an attack damage champion. Now, other top lane champions getting changed? Well, we have Cassante. This dude has moved down from broken tier to S tier, and he's copping 4 big nerfs here. So as far as your Q's knockup duration goes, this is going down. Stun duration down as well to a flat 1 second. Your W's minimum stun duration is also down, and at later ranks. And your R's magic resist, you're losing 85% of the bonus armor and magic resist that you have. These are, I mean, especially the ultimate nerf, these are actual kind of big, but I just think the champion is so innately broken anyway. He will still be really strong and blind pickable, so that's why he's only moved down to S tier. Then we also have Zac, who's moved down from S tier to A tier because of the nerfs to his base damages, and also his AP ratio and his W and his E. Apart from that, guys, not really much is changing the top lane. The tier list is largely staying the same. Of course, we have from last patch, right, the Grievous Winds anti-heal buff that's still going to be in the game. So you have champions like Aurelia, Nasus going down, Riven as well, right, with Gore Drinker losing ability, hey, same with Black Cleaver. But if we also think about Black Cleaver as well, Pantheon, you can put him a little bit higher up. There are lots of champions in the broken and S tiers who can make use of Black Cleaver. And if we just look at underrated for a second, we can see that there's Akshan here, and that's really because of the Blade of the Ruined King on-hit buff for ranged champions. Gragas is here because he does so well into Jax, so if you see Jax locked in, pick a Gragas and legit just rush a Frozen Heart, you will just win the game. Then we have Maokai. Lots of people are forgetting the Maokai top is actually still really good, because if you're going something like Sunfire Aegis into Jax show, they nerfed him for the jungle. That's all they've done. Top lane, he's actually in a really stable position and low-key broken. We have Ryze here because Ryze is just kind of like Cassante, I guess, just innately strong. If you play in mid or top lane, I mean, top lane, he might have some bad matchups against champions who can, you know, like quickly gap close onto him, but for the most part, this champion, because he is so strong, it's very difficult to actually get onto and beat. We have Taric. Now, I'm not sure if you guys watched my top lane rank 1 Korea Taric guide, where we go through what the best player in Korea does on this champion in the top lane, so definitely check that out, but he is low-key broken. Then we have Tryndamere, because of the buffs to crit, or Navori Quickblade specifically, so if you're going something like Gale Force into Navori, it's actually really good on Tryndamere. Then we have Udyr here as well. Yes, Demonic Embrace got nerfed, yes, Jaxo has been nerfed, but this champion still, by rushing a Demonic Embrace with an Armax in the top lane, is still very strong indeed. Just make sure, guys, you're not playing Yuumi, and you should be sweet. Now, moving on to the jungle tier list, not much is really changing here either. So we have Evelynn, Echo, Elise, Maokai, 4 AP champions, and I know what you guys are thinking, especially when we look at Elise and maybe Maokai, the early jungle ganks getting nerfed, right? So you're getting more experience from large monsters. So in other words, you're encouraged to farm your camps rather than actually like gank, perma-gank. Then you've also got the trinket buff. So players are going to be able to ward a little bit more, covering themselves from your dives. Also, tower damage has been buffed significantly in the early parts of a game. So if you are going for tower dives, there's less chance of you actually being able to do it. But the nerfs are not significant enough. As Elise, like, it doesn't matter, right? Because you're repel, it doesn't matter how much damage a tower is dealing, because you're avoiding all of it. So I don't think they're actually too big, and Elise is still going to be broken. These champions have the most insane win rates in solo queue across like every single elo. They have to be the 4 most broken. Now, as far as S tier champions go, very, very standard here. Graves with the new Eclipse is really liking it. Kindred, despite getting nerfed, is still very good. And that's pretty much the same for the rest of these picks as well, guys. Now, Zac is moving down from broken to S tier because of the nerfs I talked about for his top lane self. Exactly the same for the jungle. Now, if we look at underrated here, we only have one champion. But the reason Shadow Kane is here is just because he's getting some really big buffs. So you're getting more damage from your passive. You're getting more damage from your Q, especially in the mid to late game, even though the base damage is down. That's because it's scaling more of your bonus AD. 80% of it, in fact. That is huge. So Shadow Assassin Kane has moved all the way from like B or C tier into low-key broken. Now, other junglers getting changed in 13.3, we have Lee Sin. His bonus AD ratio and his Q is going up 20%. His E as well is actually dealing more damage after level 1 because it's scaling off your total AD, no longer your bonus AD. And the E slow is also going up at later ranks. These are nice buffs for Lee Sin, and that's why he's moved from B tier into A tier. I think if you're a very good Lee Sin player, you're really going to make use of these. We also have Trundle, so your dancer mode now actually scales with movement speed you have. That's huge. It's not really. He's still B tier. He's not moving. But the actual buff to Trundle is to your W's cooldown. It's going down by 2 seconds at every rank, but you're still probably only using this like once per camp and once per fight or skirmish. So honestly, Trundle is going to be exactly the same. And the other jungler getting changed, guys, this patch is going to be Amumu. So your Q's mana cost is going up by 5 at each rank. Not the biggest deal because you're probably going to have blue buff, right? Like, who really cares about this? But the big change is actually to your E's damage. So the base damage is going down at early ranks, and even though it's going to be 5 more at rank 5 or level 9 if you're maxing this first, of course, it just means that your early clear speed and your early kind of gank threats, they're not actually going to be as potent and as deadly as they were before. But honestly, I don't think it's going to be significant again. That's why Amumu is staying in A tier. You're still going to be able to do exactly what you want to do on this champion. I should also mention here, guys, that Radiant Virtue is, well, honestly just getting nerfed for anyone who isn't like a pure tank. So lots of junglers building like Demonic Embrace, like maybe Maokai and Zac, other champions who might be using it. So even Trundle, when you use your ultimate and you get all the bonus stuff from Radiant Virtue, this is just changing because there's no more ability haste. The healing as well is gone. So pretty much you just have to understand that if you're building HP, you're going to benefit more from the item because the healing is scaling more off your max HP. So this again is just encouraging pure tanks to build the item. So some champions are going to be a little bit nerfed, but they can just go another build. Like Trundle, you can just go Divine Sunder or something. Should be sweet, right? Just make sure, guys, again, you're not playing Yuumi in the jungle. Now moving into the mid lane, it's pretty much the same, guys, as well from last patch, in terms of the most broken champions anyway. Kassadin, Ryze, Tristana, Vex. Now for Ryze, Tristana, and Vex, there are no like real nerfs affecting you or changes, right? So because these are so good anyway, they're going to continue to be really OP. Then we have Kassadin. Now Kassadin is getting nerfed. Well, he's copied 3 nerfs in 13.3, but are they going to be big enough? So your E's cooldown refresh is going down to 3/4 of a second from 1 second. Your E's damage is also getting nerfed at early ranks, and your ultimate's damage is getting nerfed by 10, and therefore the stacks are also getting nerfed. Are these nerfs like really big enough? Because the champion was so broken anyway. So even with these nerfs, he's still going to be broken. Honestly, last patch as well, I should have put like Kassadin in his own tier right at the top. So this has just brought him down in line with Ryze, Tristana, and Vex, and with Rod of Ages and Sarah still being very good. So if Kassadin is not in your champion pool, guys, and you're not using him as a counter pick, honestly, like, I don't know what you're doing. Just play normals or something. He is absurdly OP in ranked. Now, as far as champions who are actually getting changed in the mid lane, well, we talked about Kayle, right? But Kayle in the mid lane, guys, please do not play her mid lane. You have no magic resistance. Like, of course, you might want to pick her into attack damage champions. Your ultimate is also a pretty good cuck to assassins. But again, just pick a top lane. You'll have a much better time of it. Now, what about other champions? Well, we have LeBlanc, who's getting more mana every 5 seconds, and her regen growth is also going up. Her mana cost of her Q is going down to a flat 50 seconds, so it's no longer scaling from 50 to 70. And your ultimate's cooldown is also going down at early ranks, from 60 seconds to 30 seconds to 50 seconds to 30 seconds. Pretty much what I look at here is just like it covers LeBlanc's weakness of just wave clearing, right? Because you're picking LeBlanc to like assassinate people, right? To set up ganks because of your amazing, like, well, just setup, I guess, with your E, right? And your gap closing with your distortion. And after that, like, you just want to clear waves and roam around the map. These mana buffs are going to help you do that. You don't have to use your, well, especially your W anyway, where you can just use it a little bit more, right? Now, because LeBlanc is getting buffed up, also moved up Lissandra a tier into A tier because Lissandra is honestly probably the best LeBlanc counter pick. But again, guys, you got to be very careful picking LeBlanc just blind because you have Vex who does very well. You have Kassadin, 2 broken champions. You have Lissandra who got buffed recently, does well into LeBlanc. So again, yeah, just please pick her as a counter pick. Otherwise, you're probably going to have a hard time of it. And those are pretty much, guys, the only mid lane champions getting changed. Now, I have moved a couple of champions around. So we have Corki who's going down to C tier. We have Yasuo who's going up to S tier, and I also put Jace in S tier as well. And this is really just from like a statistical standpoint. Jace's win rate, I know we're talking about laning here, but his win rate is actually really good from the mid lane and actually higher in the mid lane than it is in the top lane. Some champions though might be difficult for you to play against, but honestly, with the new Eclipse and then going into Mirror Mana, it's actually probably just easier to do this in the mid lane. Also, you're less susceptible to dying because the lane is shorter, so I think it's a really strong pick. Now, as far as underrated goes, we still have Graves here, we still have Kled, we still have Orianna, we also have Singe who's moving in, because Singe, well, what's going to happen with your ultimate now, you're actually activating Grievous Wounds at 40%, no longer 25%, so it's actually kind of like just a little buff that Riot have given him. And as far as Graves, Kled, and Orianna goes, we will elaborate on these guys in a future video, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, just again, make sure you're not looking in Yuumi. Now, moving down to the bot lane. Kind of the big talking point from last patch anyway was the bot lane, right, because of all the crit changes. So this is just like updated based on the data that we've seen. So Caitlyn, Draven, Jhin, and Samira are the top 4 champions just across the board. So Caitlyn has become much better because her scaling, but you didn't really deal that much damage before unless you were super far ahead. But now, even if you're not that far ahead, you deal incredible damage because getting Infinity Edge after your Gale Force, or if you do want to go like Kraken Slayer, I guess is your first item. But yes, your second item spike with Infinity Edge, it is legit. But because of that buff as well last season to your headshot damage and your passive scaling off crit now, this is huge for Kate because again, you're activating that a lot quicker in a game. Well, pretty much you don't have any bot lane counters. There might be a couple of champions who do okay, maybe Varus does alright, maybe Ashe does well, but they're not super strong at the moment. So Caitlyn is just living on her own at the top of the tier list, to be honest. But yes, alongside her Draven, because of the new Eclipse, it's actually really good on him. Essence Reaver as well. Then we have Jhin. Kind of interesting with Jhin too, I just mentioned for Draven Eclipse. As Jhin, you can go Lethality. Like if you want to go something like Ghostblade into Eclipse, Mirror Mana maybe, like Lethality Jhin is actually kind of back. Then we have Samira, because, well, there's some interesting tech with Samira. If you're rushing something like Collector into Infinity Edge, or if you're getting like Shield Bow Infinity Edge, then into Bloodthirster, the new BT is unreal on her. And we also have to consider here, guys, that Overheal is getting buffed. So instead of scaling off your max HP, as an AD carry, it's just going to like a flat increase here. So from 20 to 300 based on level, and Riot have stated that this is a buff after level 5. So for Samira, when you actually get Shield Bow, BT, and then you have Overheal in your kit, people better watch out. Even without this buff, she's doing incredibly well. That's why she's broken tip. Now across the rest of the tier list, as far as underrated champions go, with Ezreal, and I will elaborate on why in a future video as well. Exactly the same with Kog'Maw. Then we have Misfortune, and kind of a spoiler here, but yes, Lethality Misfortune, interesting. And again, I'll talk to you guys about the build and stuff, but that's actually back as well. And then we have Ziggs, because I think if like Caitlyn, Draven, and Jhin are going to be the most broken AD carries, Ziggs, because you do so well into champions that, well, just don't have like dashes and mobility, you're going to crush them. Like you can actually compete with them in the laning phase, shove them out of lane, and do very well. Just probably don't pick Ziggs if you have like 2 AP champions already. And apart from that, guys, everything else is really staying the same. Now, as far as the supports go, guys, you're not picking Yuumi still. Like legit, this champion, I'm telling you, like Riot have to completely just like destroy it. Of course, she might be played a little bit more in higher reloads, but as far as win rates go, it's legit like sub 45% across every single rank. So again, do yourselves a favor and pick someone else. And one of those champions, well, the only champion I put in broken tier for 13.3 is Blitzcrank, because last patch, right, because Grievous Wounds and anti-heal, they got buffed. Lots of champions who rely on healing. So even Janna with Moonstone, Nami, right, Lulu, Soraka, Sona, these champions who do perform well statistically, they've actually just gone weaker. And I'm really talking about again here just during the laning phase, right? So that's why they've been knocked down a bunch. And Blitzcrank, even against these champions, does so well. And just innately speaking, I think Blitz is the strongest support. The actual damage you have when you land a rocket grab, and especially when you hit level 6, it's out of this world. And that's really because the base damage buffs last season. Even if your rocket grab's damage got nerfed a little bit after rank 1, it's honestly just redundant. You easily have enough to one-shot anyone, so that's why Blitz is on his own as number 1. Now Mumu, because of the Q mana cost nerfs, he's gone down, and the E nerfs, right, so your all-in is going to be as powerful, but he's still going to be very good. And as far as the rest of this tier list go, guys, it's really being defined by the actual support buffs to the support tanks, or melee champions, I guess. So you have Alistar, Braum, Nautilus, Pyke, Thresh, and Rakan, who are getting some actual legit buffs here. That's why these champions have all really gone up. So if we look at S2, we've got Pyke, Rakan. Underrated, low-key broken, we have Thresh. And then in A tier, we have Nautilus. Now, Braum has not actually improved too much because, well, for Braum, like, you're really picking this to counter kind of engage. So if you see a Nautilus, if you see a Leona, you can lock this guy in, right? If you're playing against an Enchantress, you're really going to have a hard time. So Braum is kind of like a unique pick in that way. But we also have alongside Braum here in this tier list, in the B tier, we have Pantheon, who's getting some buffs. So to your Q's mana cost and the cooldown, these are getting buffed, and also your attack speed ratio. Not really going to mean too much for bot lane, but still, the Q buffs in particular mean you can throw your Q out more, your Comet Sphere, poke range champions, lower the HP of those melee champions, proc their bone plating as well, which is really important in the bot lane. So your all-in should be more powerful indirectly because of these buffs. And a couple of other champions have moved here, guys. So Zac has gone down a tier just because of the nerfs. And then we have Senna, who's gone down to C tier, simply because, well, like, if you're picking Senna support, I just honestly think this champion is just completely useless at the moment. Like, if you want to pick a scaling support, there are a bunch of other picks. And considering the strong AD carries at the moment and the support tank buff, Senna does so bad into these, so that's why she's gone down. Also, if you guys are thinking of picking Jhin as a support, please don't. It's such a waste. Just pick him as an AD carry. Guys, those were the tier lists for 13.3. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like down below. Any questions, any thoughts, leave them in the comment section. Until our next season 13 upload, this has been X. Peace.